Welcome back, everybody. I am your host, Alan Dyck, with Trust the Dicks podcast. Today, I'm going to go ahead and talk about couples. Now, many of you know who I am, and I've been doing this for, 21, 22 years. And I'm going to use myself as an example to start this podcast off. I will say right out at the gate, if you and or your partner are not on the same page, it just won't work. Now, I want to use myself, like I said, as an example because myself, I used to be a very, very large man. And obviously fitness wasn't a very big part of my life, hence the fact that Reese's Pieces Buttercups and Twinkies and fast food were a large staple of my 7-day-a-week diet. But I will say that, my wife at the time, she loved me for me, and which was amazing because, looking back, you would have to have love given the fact that I was as out of shape as I was and in the position that I was. Fast forward a bunch of years when I started to feel that, I needed to make a change and I needed to turn it around and get healthier for myself, not anybody else, for myself. And when I went ahead and did that, I realized that, not only did I feel better, did I look better and all the things, but, I was a better boyfriend. I was a better fiance. I was a better husband. And, my ex-wife at the time was in great shape. And, she didn't necessarily eat all the fast food that I did. She wasn't a part of that. She partook in a little bit of it, but it wasn't to the extreme that I let myself go. When we moved to Kelowna, it was a huge eye-opener for me because, one of my mentors, Ross Duncan, I learned so much from him at such a young age. I was only, I think 22 or 23 at the time. And I was just kind of coming into my fitness journey. I had just lost my 100 pounds and I started to feel better, look better, all the things. And looking back, my ex-wife said that this was the catalyst that went ahead and, started the journey of us actually separating, because I ended up not being the person that she had gotten together with because I wasn't that person anymore. I didn't go ahead and have those Sundays where, we just ate junk food. We had carpet picnics and there would be hundreds of dollars in candy and junk food on the floor. And I would just go to town and end up saying, don't fucking touch my stomach because I still needed to eat, and then to get to where I was going. And then when I met Ross, he taught me the value of nutrition and whole foods and a lot of the stuff that I know to this day. The big deal with myself is once I learn something, I can't unlearn it. And so it's really hard for me because if I know that when I consume certain foods and they're going to make me feel like shit, I won't eat them anymore. I know that if I'm going to go ahead and consume a food that may be cancer causing or might have certain things in it that are just not good for the body and are going to cause A, B, and X later down the road, I will just eliminate them. And that's just who I am. And that's who I grew into. It was very hard for my ex to go ahead and deal with that because I was that kind of person that if I'm not all or nothing, I'm all or nothing. And there's no in between. There was no gray area. And so sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad. In this case, it wasn't the greatest. And our families, my parents included and her parents included, whenever we made food or whenever they made food, it wasn't the healthiest. And we had like shepherd's pie, lasagna, all this different stuff. And don't get me wrong, that's okay, but it's not the way they made it. And so even though we weren't necessarily eating that all the time, that's how my ex learned how to make food from her mom. I learned how to make food from my parents. And because they didn't understand, what to put in the food, what to use, what not to use, those are the things that we learned. And that's how we learned to make it. And so when I started going down this journey of, understanding what to eat, why to eat, how I'm supposed to eat for my body on the direction that I want to go, I knew a lot of those foods weren't going to play a part. Everything from high amounts to sugar, to margarine, to all these artificial things that make up all these food. And don't get me wrong, the foods taste amazing, but they weren't allowing me to go in the direction that I needed to go and that I knew I wanted to go. I cared more about how I felt and how energetic I was than about how good the food might taste, knowing how bad it was. Our big issue was dinner time because, breakfast, I'm doing my own thing, off to work I go. I've got my food for the rest of the day. It's nothing to do with her. That's okay. But when I came home, I'd always balk or make little comments, oh, we're eating this, or, oh, you put that in this. And because she wasn't on the same page as I was, it was a huge deterrent on her making dinner, which in turn, caused a big rift between us. And so, where I'm going with this is if you both aren't on the same page in whatever direction you're going, I find it so much harder to go ahead and get excited to wake up, not knowing whether or not you guys are going to go down that same train track together. I will say that it definitely did put a fork in between us. And, because of where I was and where I was going, they were completely different people. It's sad to say that it happened. Obviously there was other things, but this is a big deal because nutrition wasn't a thing I thought about as much as I do now. And I wish I had learned it at a younger age to go ahead and be able to grow up with her and to learn that stuff together, but I didn't. And so, I just want to say for all those people out there that are having that issue, there is a solution. I wish now I knew what I know now to go ahead and implement that solution back in the day when the issues were coming up. I want to talk briefly about another couple that I had trained. And this gentleman was out of shape. He was in a car accident. He could barely bend down in a squat position, let alone put on his shoes. And when he came to me, he just said, can you help me? Can you help me feel better, look better, all the things? And I said, honestly, dude, as long as you listen to what I'm going to say, put into motion what we go ahead and set up, and just make sure that you're trying to go in the right direction every single day, 100% will be able to help you. I'd say about 4 or 5 months went down the road and he lost, I think it was like 40 pounds. It was crazy. The guy was 6'4" and didn't realize how attractive he was underneath all this stuff. Now I'm saying that, and a bunch of you can probably see where I'm going with this already. The guy is 6'4", he looks amazing now. There was a day where we were working out in the gym, and like I said in the beginning, he couldn't squat down, let alone tie on his shoes, put on his own shoes. And there was a day we were working out and he was doing walking lunges and he's got 50 pounds in either hand. And for him, that's a huge deal. And he had finished the set and he stood up and both of us looked at each other at the same time and we knew exactly what we were thinking. He had done it. He got to be able to go ahead and see what it's like to put in the time and the energy to look and feel like he did in that exact moment. And you can see on it, you can see on people too, because they'll show you a smile that's very genuine. And, I was so happy for him. Now this, I wish I could just end the story and say that was great. They live happily ever after, but I'm not going to say that on this one. So not only did he not realize how good looking and how in shape he was underneath, it also messed with his head a little bit. And he started to get way more attention than he was used to. And obviously one thing led to another. And, he did something that he wasn't necessarily supposed to. And it ended up causing him and his current wife to break up. Now, I want to say that's one extreme. Obviously, my story was a little bit different. His story was a little bit different, but they all have the same principle. If you're not on the same page, then you're going in opposite directions, regardless of what you're doing. Now, I will say the clients and the couples that I help on a daily basis, I make sure to go ahead and build their food plans, their nutrition plans, cohesive to their lifestyle. Because I find that, like I said in the beginning, other than breakfast, some couples eat breakfast and I give them the option to go ahead and be able to make the same kind of foods, but obviously they have different amounts they're going to consume. One's male, one's female, one's got a different goal than the other. But I found that dinners, like with myself, that was such a big deal, are a huge deal when it comes to people eating as a family unit and not having to make 6 different things at dinner time for the kids, for themselves. Okay, well, he's on this fucking plan and she's on this plan and the kids don't like fucking fish and they don't like this. So you have to disguise everything. So I go ahead and I build something that is conducive to that lifestyle that allows each of those people, husband, wife, doesn't matter who it is, to go ahead and make something that is going to be unified that everybody can eat. And that's the cool thing. Like I said, I wish I had known this 22, 23 years ago to be able to go ahead and put this into play, put this into motion, because it would have saved so many arguments and so many fights. It wasn't a drastic thing to change, but it was just understanding how to change it and how to go about it. And so it's not hard. I said, I've been doing this for 22 years now. And so I have so many couples that work together, love working together. But once again, other than just dinner, I find that The fitness aspect of it has to kind of be similar too. Now, no one's saying that each couple should both be ripped or, they're going to go ahead and get divorced or break up. No, that's not what I'm saying. I don't care what either one of them do, but being physically active is a very big deal on a grand scale. I had a client that, I just talked about this in one of my stories a little while back, and I had a guy, he ended up dropping 47 pounds in the course of almost 3 months. And during his journey with me, after the first 2 weeks, his wife literally came through, she came unglued and one day just lost it on him and said, you know what, I can't carry on this way. I'm always making something different at dinner. You know what, you're not eating what I'm eating. You're not eating what the kids are eating. And it's very frustrating to go ahead and have to cook multiple meals. He talked to me about this and he said, what should I do? What would be the solution to fix this? I truly said to him, I was like, how do you feel right now? He's like, I feel amazing. How'd you feel before? I felt tired. I felt sluggish. I had very little energy. I always wanted to go for a nap in the afternoon. I couldn't play with my kids. I was like, how important are those things to you now? He's like, well, they're everything. This is the reason why I started this. Not only do I want to feel better, look better, but I want to be able to be a huge role model for the people in my world. I said, okay, well, you just told me the answer. So I said to him, you make the choice, but make the choice based on how you're feeling. I said, your wife might have her own goal, but this is yours. And all these things are way more important than having to go ahead and eat the same thing at dinner for X amount of months until you get to that ultimate goal to where we can have those liberties to change up the food and eat as a unit. He said, okay. So he goes home, talks to his wife. She's like, you know what? I understand. She didn't. She was very frustrated with him because she still felt the way she did. Couple other weeks go by. So now it's only been a month. Now the guy's down, I'd say 16, 17 pounds. He comes in one day and he's like, dude, it clicked. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, after the kids went to bed, we were sitting there watching TV and she's like, can I start doing what you're doing? And he's like, what do you mean? Well, I'm noticing you're having more energy. You're feeling better. You're way more confident than you were before. The kids notice it. You're not falling asleep while we're cooking dinner. You're not falling asleep after 5 seconds of watching a show, and you're more attentive and you're almost you're a better father because of it. Well, she wanted to do the same thing. So he calls me up and he's like, hey man, can I get my wife on the plan? I was like, 100% I can. And the cool thing about that is she was able to go ahead and accept what he said because it was his goal. It was important to him. And as a couple, I feel that you should go ahead and support your partner's goals because it's very, very important, especially things that are fitness-based and health-based. Because once again, I will say this on loop. The better you feel, the better you look, the more confident you are, the more energy you have, the more addicting it is, and the more people want to go ahead and do what you are doing. And that was a perfect example of exactly that. He turned out to be his own walking billboard, and someone that he saw every single day of his life, which is his wife, went ahead and went from one position to, I want to do that. And now, so they were together he dropped 47 pounds over 3 months and she dropped 23. Now they're both still current clients of mine to this day, but now their life is 10 times better in the sense that they're both healthy. They both feel amazing. They both look amazing. Because like I've said before, the goal for me on every single male client that I have is to wake up with a 6-pack. And for every woman that I train is to wake up and feel comfortable naked or in your own skin. That is a big deal for me because I don't want the clothes you're wearing to go ahead and make you look like you want to. I want you to feel good in your own skin. And that's a big deal. So it's so cool because like I said, they're still clients of mine today. And the things they have learned and the things they have put forth in motion have transferred onto their kids. And now their kids are doing the same thing. Like me back in the day, like I said, my parents didn't know what to eat, what to feed us. We had that, the Cheese Whiz with the little red stick and the crackers. Yeah, we ate that shit. Okay. Obviously, my parents didn't understand what to go ahead and feed us. They thought they were doing the right thing, but apparently hamburger helper from a box is not the way to do it. But once again, it's not like they didn't do anything, not like they did something wrong. They just didn't understand. And so the cool thing with this couple that I train is now they understand, they know what's healthy, they know how they feel, and they want to make sure that it runs down to their kids. And now their kids are just like excelling on a different level. So you know what? If you can do it together, it makes everything so much better. And it doesn't have to be chicken, rice, and vegetables and working out 7 days a week and working out for 2 hours at a time. Because once again, that's not sustainable. It's going ahead and putting in something into motion that allows you to go in the right direction, to still enjoy your life, to still have fun with your partner. And once again, the better you feel, the better she feels, the better all those other things come into play, which allows the relationship to be that much stronger. I've got one other example. And it's a current client that I have right now. I'm not going to say her name out loud. And she did so well. She dropped a ton of weight and she's this ripped freak. And she didn't realize how well she looked underneath. But it was so cool to see her get to this. The really sad part about it was, the person that she's with, it's not that he wasn't happy. I just think that once again, he wasn't in the same mindset. And so when you're not in that same mindset, you see your partner going ahead and getting into better shape. As a guy, if you saw your wife or your girl getting into better shape and you weren't in shape yourself, your head runs a mile a minute. Now you're thinking, okay, is she going to leave me? Is she, she's getting more attention. Like all these things are happening. Wow, she's dressing sexier. She feels more confident. Is she going to, like, all these things go on in your head. And, I'm not saying that that's what happened with him, but I am saying that, it was an issue and it caused a problem. And it actually caused such a problem that she had to go ahead and kind of pull back from her training. And not that she was told to gain weight again, but she kind of let herself go in the sense that the individual felt better about himself because she wasn't this hard body, this, wow, look at this person. Holy shit, her shoulders look amazing. And all the things that go along with getting into amazing shape. A little bit of time goes by. I lost my mind on her. I said, you know what? Like, this is horseshit. You looked amazing. You felt amazing. You had crazy energy. And you know what? It was addicting for all my clients that are in here, for everybody else that's training with their clients, to see somebody that looks like that, especially as we get older. Like, I'm 42. The goal is to get better as I get older. And I don't care if I'm 65 years old, I'm going to have a ton of hair, I'm going to have a six pack, and I better look amazing and have better energy than I did when I was 25. Okay. That's the goal. That's my goal. And after a little while went on, she just said, you're right. Fuck it. This is for me and no one else. And that is a big deal because so many people play their results, or not play their results, play their goals on the individuals they're with. If you have your own goal and your own thing to accomplish, then get your shit done. Okay. Because you're the most important person in the entire world. The better shape you're in, the better you feel, the better everything else happens around you. And you know what? It's very addicting. And I will say this because I see it firsthand every single day. Every single one of my clients that comes in here, they're all in amazing shape. And it's cool because other people around them ask them what they're doing and they want to do it too, because they want to look and feel and have that energy like they do. So after she said, fuck it, she went ahead and started getting into better shape and just said, you know what, this is for me. I felt amazing and I want to get that back. Well, guess what happened? He ended up doing the same thing. He started working out, started losing weight, started feeling better. And now they're on the same page. So, I'll say this quite often. If you're not going down the same road, the gap can only get so big before someone has to make a change. And like I said, I've seen it multiple ways where people end up breaking up. Because first off, they don't realize what they look like underneath. They didn't realize the attention they could get. The other person may or may not have actually, taken charge of their own life to say, you know what, you're doing this for you. I want to do this for me and let's do it together. Now, I have found that it doesn't matter what you do for a living. You can work at 7-Eleven, Home Depot, which I will work at a Home Depot when I retire because I fucking love Home Depot, to Walmart, to, these 7-figure entrepreneurs that are doing what they're doing. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. The goal is to be in the best shape possible, to kick as much ass at whatever you do every single day. And so, you know what? That's what I preach. That's what I practice. And that's what I want to instill, especially with people that are living this life together. Because the more they can do together, the better they're going to be as a whole. And honestly, it's the dream. That's what I want. And that's what I want for people. And like I said, I'll always go back to this. I wish I had known what I know today to apply that to, the younger Alan. But it's now my goal to go ahead and teach and have as many people understand that it can be done for them as well. And it's not that hard. But, I'm going to keep rambling on because I love this shit. But you know what? That's the goal. That's what I want. And